Well, welcome back, everyone. My name is Mitchell Anderson. I'm the lead minister at St. Paul's United Church, and each week we're having a Zoom conversation with someone from our church about a different line of a new creed. And this week we're talking about the line to seek justice and resist evil. And I'm very excited for my conversation partner today, Elsie Livingston. Elsie, do you want to just introduce yourself and a little bit of your background for folks?
Yes, my husband Roy and I, in retirement, moved to Saskatoon, which we always wanted to do because we had good experiences here as students, and but we were from other parts of Saskatchewan, and so in retirement, when we moved to Saskatoon, we became part of the faith community at St. Paul's Church.
Wonderful. And the first thing we're going to talk about, Elsie, is what does the line to seek justice and resist evil mean for you?
In my mind, I separate justice and charity. They're very closely related, and certainly charity is an important aspect of our carrying out our faith, as illustrated in the story of the Good Samaritan, for example. And that story is so well known among most people in society, and sometimes people just need that food, that shelter, and as we say, and it's kind of a stark statement, but it's sometimes a reality. We don't want our other people in our community, in our city, in our country to die of starvation out in the cold.
Yeah.
So charity is certainly an important aspect. But I think we have to go beyond that model and to bring solutions that will perhaps be solving some of those situations. And so that involves a different kind of action. And what I learned along the way of my life was a term, enabling others or building capacity in other people. Everyone has something to offer. And if we can have that interaction with the individuals who have needs, whether they be for food or shelter or other types of things, education and so on, if we have a chance to get to know that person, we see that they have capacity to build on their own abilities. And perhaps as our role is in seeking justice is to assist them in the way that they see a need for, and perhaps in cases provide resources that we might have that will assist them in achieving their own goals.
I really like that idea that charity is good, but justice goes beyond charity to ask, why do these problems happen and can we solve them? And that idea of building capacity in others, I think, is good. You know, there's the old parable about teaching a person to fish and then they can feed themselves for much longer than just giving someone a fish. And sometimes we do just need to give people things in times of need, but that ultimately justice asks more of us, which is to give people the ability to achieve things for ourselves.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
And what do you think about for us as a church in terms of seeking justice? How does that approach
Yeah.
shape us as a church?
Well, Mitchell, I'd like to go just beyond that justice to the other part of that phrase in our new creed, um, resisting evil. So how do we do that? And sometimes there are things, aspects of poverty, child poverty in Canada, for example, or I was amazed to have it drawn to my attention during the time of the COVID that some workers don't have paid sick leave, for example. So sometimes we have to step out into society and the political world, in fact, and influence where we can, and by getting actively involved, perhaps in and in politics. But as members of a democracy, we do have responsibility to applaud um, government policies that we think are helpful, and also to oppose those we think that are not helpful. And that could extend to the environment as well. And some people have taken up as their cause um, single use, getting away from single use plastic,
Mhm.
things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
before COVID, we were trying as a church very hard to reduce our waste, and we still are. We have to do a little bit of waste right now with COVID, fewer reusable things, but certainly when we can, we'll want to get back to that about how can we,
yeah,
make sure the coffee we're buying is been fairly traded and the people have received a good wage, and how do we make sure the materials we're using aren't contributing to pollution? How do we do a whole bunch of things like that? Yeah.
yeah. And I think people, we sort of support those causes, but we just don't think of them as sort of resisting evil
Mhm.
and seeking justice.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you think, Elsie, that seeking justice and resisting evil, you talked a little bit about some of the things that COVID has revealed. How do you think COVID has changed or affected seeking justice and resisting evil?
Well, certainly we or our governments, no one was really given warning to plan for an event like this. So, we had to react instead of be proactive. And so, for instance, our Christmas projects this year, we we didn't have the freedom to sort of visit with people and to determine their needs or what really was most helpful to them. And we reacted in a way that was very generous and kind. And we have a lot of that capacity at St. Paul's. It certainly demonstrated the generosity of our faith community. But and also the one aspect of that was all working with other associations, like, and in our case, for this time, it was mental health. But that has a long tradition at St. Paul's, especially at Christmas time, and people are generous in giving gifts. That those gifts were channeled to some community resource, and uh, and those community groups, and for instance, the Sutherland School, they know what their needs are. We don't have to determine that, in our view, these things are good for them.
Mhm.
They can let us know what is really the most need.
There's a story I think I can share that I just love about St. Paul's. There was a family of new Canadians, and people in the church wanted to get them a deep freeze because folks who grow up in Saskatchewan, many of us, myself included, need a
Right,
deep freeze to store lots of things, frozen meat or bread or what have you, and wanted it to be helpful. But this family had the courage to say, actually, what we really need first is a rice cooker. That rice was a big part of their diet, and they said, could we get a rice cooker instead? And what I love about that is that people have reflected and told me that story to illustrate just the point you were making, Elsie, that we need to not assume what people need, but ask and respond in the ways that will genuinely help, whether it's the school or a family or community groups, not to tell them what they need, but to ask and support. And part of justice there is giving up power. That in charity models, sometimes we have all the power, but justice invites us to give up the power and let other people make the decisions and to just help them and support them. And that can be tough, but it's better in the end.
we are on the same wavelength, I think, on that for sure.
Yeah.
And the um, uh, yeah, gosh, I've lost it now for a few moments.
That's okay.
It will come back.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I know what I wanted to say was that COVID has, in a way, it's afforded us time. It's afforded us time to build a strong base. Uh, and for instance, we visit our vision and different aspects of our governance. And and I think we have to, because we are not out of it yet, we have to capitalize on that and plan ahead. And I liked how we used to do brainstorming,
Mm.
and you could come up with whatever crazy or outrageous idea was on your mind to work with some situation. You could say it out, and wasn't perhaps the most practical suggestion, but people would build on it. And we built on each other's ideas, and we can. And we're doing a little of that, I think, in our spiritual growth groups too. That beyond our just meeting our own spiritual and emotional needs, we are getting into specific situations and sharing ideas.
Yeah. Good. Um, and then, I wonder, Elsie, what do you see St. Paul's doing to seek justice and to resist evil? Where are we doing that?
Well, I think I've already mentioned a couple of ways. The planning, for one, and another one is working with other groups. Um, the and perhaps even other. I've had good experiences working with other faith communities,
Mm.
particularly in sponsorships of people who have fled their homes and arrived under refugee status. And we learn so much from other working closely with other groups. And I've been wondering what groups do we have in our immediate community that we could coordinate our efforts and do a joint effort instead of just working alone.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thinking again about um, charity and justice and thinking about the ways that they're sometimes different. One of the things I think is important in partnership is that we are changed and we learn. It's not that we need to go and teach others, but it's that we need to teach others and let them teach us. And so whether it's the school or another church, that we have lots to bring, but we also have lots to receive in gifts to receive from others. And that's important in us in thinking about justice and our mission work. That it's not just us doing nice things for other people, but it's trying to do things together and both of us learning from each other.
And St. Paul's community has had some experience in that type of thing. So we have to build on that, I believe.
Yeah, can you give me an example of a time like that that we can build on?
Well, yes, I think at one point we had the project of providing the warm place during the daytime in from the cold. Um, Perhaps there were uh, the project did get underway, and perhaps we could have um, built on that experience we had and worked with other communities, thought about transportation, for example, for people, because we are quite a distance from we were separated from the rest of the city in some aspects, and and yeah, I think that that I'm not saying we have to do that again, but yeah, working on those kinds of experiences. And I know there's been a lot of work done in literacy, which is a particular passion of mine from my career. But um, also, I think we need to have guidance and support from people who have trains, have techniques, have training and techniques to help us in those aspects. I really believe in volunteers, but I also believe as volunteers we need to have training in how to work too.
And then that comes back to your point about capacity building, that,
Hmm.
we need to build up our volunteers to have the skills to do those kinds of justice work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Right.
Well, Elsie, is there anything else on your mind or heart about seeking justice and resisting evil? Anything else you want to share with folks in the St. Paul's community this Lent?
I have stories and stories, as
Share
people
some.
who know will tell you.
Yeah.
But the one that came to mind this morning was I was seeking employment because our children were, at the age where we were beginning to look for financial support for post-secondary education, and yet we didn't need a full-time child or caregiver in the home, and but in the community where I was living, there were no teaching opportunities for me. So I was challenged to with a job. It was kind of a carrot and a stick, I guess, situation, because I was offered a higher salary than they would usually pay to teach in the community college system in those days in adult education. And working with that community, I, I quickly learned to take to give them the lead, to give them the power, because I learned something. United Church has been wonderful for training opportunities in my case as a volunteer, and I had experience like in what we now call small groups, and facilitating group discussions and so on. First day I went to this class, which was in a rural community, and the things I had no idea what to sort of how to start this, and so I was finished my whole agenda by about one in the afternoon, and the class was for another couple of hours. So we had a coffee break, and during the coffee break, I sort of organized in my mind how we could have the brainstorming groups. And it was a small group of people, about 15. So we had two groups, and I asked them a question. How do you think adult education is going to be different from the education that you had when you went to school? I learned so much.
Mm.
And one of the important things that one of the groups reported was, the teacher will laugh with us.
Mm.
And and another, and then as I began to teach, I found that every student had a different need. For one, it was I've had trouble passing the driver written test. I need to have help with, reading the driver manual, which I found was far from plain English. And another fellow was doing some piecework for a local farmer, and he said, "When my batteries on my device are worn out, I can calculate what I'm owed on that device. But when it was just a simple calculator in those days. When the battery's gone, worn out, I wanted the math skills to do this multiplication in my head." And then much later too, and I was working particularly in family literacy and parenting skills as a volunteer. One young father came to the group and said, "I have a daughter who's just beginning school. She's starting to read. And I realized I need to have better reading skills to keep ahead of her and also encourage her to stay in school." And something that I didn't, consider when I was an adolescent. I dropped out of school and I need to improve my reading skills. And that's why I'm here. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I was hoping you'd share some of those stories, Elsie, of your life and your many, many years of seeking justice, and look forward to all the years ahead of your contribution. We're so delighted that you're part of St. Paul's and took time out of your day to for this conversation with all of us. I know we'll all be blessed by your wisdom, Elsie. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mitchell. And I hope to meet you in person soon.
Someday soon. Yes.